Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. I wanted to recommend to you today Neil Gaiman's book, The Monarch of the Glen. I've loved reading Neil Gaiman for many years, but I don't know how much The Monarch of the Glen, I don't know how visible it is in the Gaiman universe. My sense is he's much better known for his big works like American Gods or the Sandman series or something like that, which he absolutely deserves to be famous for and well known for. But I really like The Monarch of the Glen, and everything that I like about Gaiman is working really well in this book. It's not long, it's a longish short story or short novella. There are three reasons I really like it. The first is the narration and the construction of the story. Gaiman is just a master of his craft. He's so good at brief narration. It's something I've come to really love and value. The main reason I put down fiction, whether it's published or I have friends sending it to me, is just too many words. I wasn't always this way, but I've gotten to the point where I find Ernest Hemingway viscerably pleasurable to read. And it's because I find the fewer words there are, the more my imagination is engaged. And the more words the author gives me, the more mental, unless he's just a master stylist, the more words I get, the more mentally taxing it is. And for some reason, my mind isn't engaged in quite the same way. Early on, the main character in The Monarch of the Glen, that's a great title, by the way, The Monarch of the Glen, already interesting, but I digress. Early on, the main character, he's hiking in the very far northern reaches of Scotland. Across a lake, he sees a big house, and it's like a one-sentence description, and as I'm reading, I can see it. I mean, I've been to Scotland, so I can picture it. But the short narration, it makes it more vivid for some reason. It's also superb at suggesting this much bigger mythical fantasy world that is impinging on normal reality, you know? The brief narration, it suggests the thinness of the surface of normalcy, which Gaiman often does. It's very well crafted and nothing gets in the way. Nothing gets in the way. I really like that. The construction of the story, for 90% of the book, you have no idea what's going on. It makes no sense. But I never found myself going, oh, this is just silly. I don't want to read this. Everything comes together really nicely at the end. And he somehow manages to get all the gears to work right. It comes together really nicely in the story's climax. It's really satisfying. So just the way the story is put together, it's wonderful. The second reason I love this book is the artwork by Daniel Agneas. I hope I'm saying his name right. I don't know that he's illustrated any other of Gaiman's work. The artwork is fantastic. There's art on every single page. It's black and white, some ink drawings, and some of them it looks like he just kind of throws ink on a page and takes a photograph of it. Maybe he didn't, but that's what it looks like. And they're all really eerie and weird. All the characters are misshapen. The eyes, it really adds to the story. The story would be great on its own. But this creepy, unsettling atmosphere, this sense that there are monsters everywhere, the artwork is a wonderful commentary on the story. The story's better for having the artwork on every page. At a couple points, I just stopped reading and was flipping ahead just to look at the pictures. It really contributes. The third reason I love The Monarch of the Glen is the way the past and the mythic past impinges on the present. Gaiman does this very, very frequently in his stories. I have not read anyone who does it as well as he does. I think Gaiman makes it look deceptively easy. The myths and folk tales and characters and heroes and villains that you read about from ancient Greece, ancient Mesopotamia, Norse myths, Irish myths, just everything. Frequently in Gaiman's stories, those stories and those characters are still going on, and they kind of crash into and become a part of a story with modern characters. And it's all one story. It should be oil and water, but it isn't. It works together really seamlessly. I think Gaiman makes it look really easy. And there's something I just find so pleasing about that. Early on, one character says to the main character in the far north of Scotland, "Do you know why they call it Sunderland?" And she says, "Because the Norsemen who came here centuries ago, that's Southland. To them, it was South. And for me as a reader, I'm thinking, oh, the very far extreme north of the UK. But actually, it's the South, and it's this weird, dizzying sort of shift that, like, wow, the world is much bigger and stranger and was viewed much, much differently from the way I view the world. As you read, I'm not spoiling anything. This becomes pretty clear right from the first page. I'm not spoiling anything when I say this. You can tell it's not explained. It's not really explained at the end. Gaiman prefers mysteries to explanations, but there is a satisfying closure to this. You can tell about half the characters are not human beings. Most of them are lying about who they are, and a lot of them have been around for a very long time. And the way all those ancient myths and folk tales and hero tales, it's still current and it still comes into the story. It's amazing. I've never read anyone who does it as well and seemingly artlessly as Gaiman does, although I'm sure there's a lot of art behind it. One thing I noticed this time, and I don't think... Sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. I think those stories are incredibly valuable. The story, for a modern Westerner like me, the story we're telling about ourselves is one of progress, especially scientific progress. And it's a story that's not completely wrong, but we tend to think of ourselves as being superior to prior generations. And in some ways we are. There have been amazing technological developments. The fact that slavery is no longer legal, I think that counts as progress. It's not completely false. But the more I read ancient stuff, the more I think, well, I have a lot to learn from this. And not many people know about it. And Gaiman knows it really well. He is so good at evoking and invoking the past. And that's a very, very valuable thing. In some ways, Gaiman's a very modern author. In some ways, he isn't. And in addition to being such a fine storyteller, a talented storyteller, the way he tells story, the way he works in the ancient stuff, I think modern Westerners like me need that more than ever. C.S. Lewis, when he was reviewing Lord of the Rings, he said, the modern mind has, if anything, more need of fantasy than the child's. As a 46-year-old, I found that to be true. I think the modern Western mind has more need of ancient fantasy. Not that it's all perfect, of course, but it's still valuable. One thing I noticed on my second time through the Monarch of the Glen that I didn't see the first time got me thinking, this is not a criticism, it doesn't detract from the story at all. But one thing I noticed that was a little bit weird, and I'm going to do my best not to spoil it, it becomes clear in the last couple pages that there's a particular myth slash folktale slash hero story that Gaiman is really strongly drawing on. By chance, I happened to be reading it as I'm reading Monarch of the Glen, and it struck me how utterly opposite the material, the fabric, the raw furnishing of the story, of the ancient story that Gaiman's drawing in. He puts it together in a way diametrically opposite to how it was back then, which is fine. If you're going to retell an ancient story, tell it differently, that's fine. But in the ancient hero tale that he's interacting with, home and hearth and a fire and a hearth and friendship and civilization and the warmth and eating together, being together in a home, that's really important. And that's set in contrast to the monstrous outside otherness that just hates it, wants to ruin it. Home is a really important theme in this book as well, but it comes up completely oppositely, where the non-human characters are kind of creepy, but they're not exactly if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. The human beings are really messed up. They're the bloodthirsty ones. And in more than one way, characters are trying to get home, or they don't know they need to, or they don't know where home is. And it was striking to me. I don't think for me, this didn't make the story any less good. But it was interesting that the raw material of the story showed up in so exactly opposite a way. I think I need to think about that more. When I've read American Gods, which you absolutely should read, it's the highest compliment I can pay to an author is to say that he will be read 100 years from now. And I think Neil Gaiman will be read 100 years from now. The conceit behind the story is superb, that all the old gods are still alive, still living, and they're just slumming it because almost no one worships them anymore, you know? So there's some ancient goddess of love that's having to work as a prostitute on the street, you know. And there are new gods like media with a capital M. I don't think the internet is a god. He or she might be, but I think television is. And they're out to kill all the old gods. One guy named Shadow gets mixed up in it. It's a superb idea. It doesn't take away from the story at all, but I notice all the obscenity and the dirt and the blood and the revenge of paganism, of the ancient world, of these ancient myths comes through, but the dignity and the nobility and the slender doesn't. It doesn't come through in this story either. That doesn't make Gaiman's stories any less good stories. But for someone who's so keenly aware of the past and so good at making it current and making it feel like the past, making it feel strange, it's a little bit odd to me that it comes through in such a different form. I don't think that's a literary sin, but it made me think. I'd love to know what you think, if you liked the book, if you didn't. And I'd love to know what people think about the way in which Gaiman interacts with the past. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. But anyway, The Monarch of the Glen, extremely strong recommendation. I love this book. You will love it too. Had a great time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.